Οι νέοι κανόνες των τραπεζών που ισχύουν άμεσα από Δευτέρα 2 Φεβρουαρίου 2026. Προσέξτε πάρα πολύ, ισχύουν άμεσα.
They passed it. A new banking rule starts tonight. By 5 p.m. today, banks shut their doors and a policy quietly went live that changes how your money works. By Monday morning, your money won't feel like it truly belongs to you anymore. They picked Friday on purpose, so most people wouldn't notice until it was too late. Now withdrawals are capped at $500. Access to larger amounts takes 7 days. If you try moving money into gold, crypto, or silver, your account gets flagged and frozen for 30 days. This isn't theory, this is law. Greece, Cyprus, Lebanon started the same way there, and now it's here. Time is no longer measured in months, it's measured in hours. Welcome to gold-silver term, regulatory compliance. Before we go deeper into what just changed with your bank account, I want you to do something real quick. That subscribe button, yeah, I know everyone mentions it, but here's the truth. If you've lived through a few financial cycles, if you remember when a handshake meant something, then you already know this kind of information doesn't come from evening news headlines. It comes from people who read the fine print, page 500 of government filings, the documents quietly released at 5 p.m. on Friday. So hit subscribe, not for me, but for yourself. Because what you're about to hear could be the difference between being ready and being stuck. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, the United States, Europe, or somewhere else. Because this isn't just one country anymore. This is global. Now let's talk about what just happened to your money and what still might be possible before Monday morning. The clock hit 5 p.m. on Friday. Bank branches locked up, employees went home, and the financial system went quiet for the weekend. But this time, something changed. During that silent gap between market close and Monday, a new rule went active. They called it a gold-silver term, liquidity preservation directive, a phrase so dull most people wouldn't question it. But behind that language was a major shift in how Americans can access their own cash. That timing wasn't random. Financial regulators follow a pattern. Friday evening is always step one. That's when controversial rules get released, when newsrooms shut down, when people think about dinner plans instead of bank balances. By the time Monday morning arrives, the rule is already active. No debate, no warning, no public vote, just done. This rule does something very specific. It puts strict limits on daily cash withdrawals immediately. Anyone trying to take out more than $500 from an ATM will probably see a decline, not because the money isn't there, but because the system now has a ceiling, a hard limit on how much of your own money you can touch each day. If someone walks into a bank on Monday asking for $5,000, they won't walk out with cash. They'll get a form instead, a request that takes approval and a 7-day waiting period. 7 days to reach money that already belongs to them. That's gold-silver term, liquidity rationing in real life. The official reason is stability, preventing panic, protecting the system. But the math tells another story. Banks operate on gold-silver term, fractional reserve banking. That means they don't actually keep all depositor money on hand. They keep a small portion and lend out the rest. That works until people start withdrawing at the same time. When withdrawals exceed reserves, the system breaks. And right now, behind calm press releases and reassuring statements, bank balance sheets are showing stress. Not the kind that makes headlines, but the kind buried inside quarterly filings, derivative exposure reports, and closed-door meetings at the Federal Reserve. The institutions see what the public doesn't yet. Reserves are thin. Loan portfolios are weakening. If enough people tried to pull money at once, the system would freeze. So they did what governments always do when the math stops working. They changed the rules. History shows this pattern clearly. Before every major banking collapse, currency crisis, or financial breakdown, access to money gets restricted. It starts small. A limit here, a delay there, a form to fill out. Then it tightens. A $500 ATM cap becomes a freeze. A 7-day delay becomes indefinite. Economists call this the gold-silver term denial phase, the period when officials say everything is fine while quietly rolling out emergency controls. By the time people notice the contradiction, the restrictions are already in place. This rule does something else most people won't catch. It expands what counts as suspicious activity. Before, banks flagged transactions linked to crime or money laundering. Now the definition is much wider. Buying crypto can get flagged. Purchasing physical gold or silver can get flagged. Any transaction that looks like you're trying to exit the banking system can trigger a report. And once flagged, your account can be frozen for 30 days while they review it. That's 30 days without access to money, not because of crime, but because you tried to move wealth outside the system. This isn't about safety. This is about building a fence around the exits. And they're doing it quietly on Friday evening while people think about the weekend. Why now? That's the real issue. What do regulators know that they aren't saying yet? And how much time is left before these restrictions tighten? 3 countries, same week. Same playbook. While Americans were learning about their $500 withdrawal limit, similar rules rolled out in the United Kingdom. Australia followed 48 hours later. Same wording, same timing, same structure. That wasn't coincidence. That was coordination. When financial systems move together across continents, it signals preparation for something bigger. Hidden inside the rule is a section most people will never read. Gold-silver term, subsection compliance classification. It redefines high-risk financial behavior. Before, high risk meant dealing with sanctioned nations or undocumented transfers. Now it includes everyday actions like buying crypto, purchasing physical precious metals, or moving funds to non-traditional platforms. These actions now trigger automatic review, not human review. Algorithmic flags that freeze first and ask questions later. That freeze can last 30 days, bills still arrive, rent still comes due, life continues, but money stops. And here's what reveals the truth. The rule doesn't require proof of wrongdoing. It doesn't require criminal suspicion. It only requires movement toward assets the system doesn't control. That's gold-silver term, capital control disguised as consumer protection. Economists have studied capital controls for decades. Argentina used them, Venezuela used them, Greece used them. The pattern is always the same. First, limits on money leaving the country, then limits on money leaving banks, then limits on transfers between accounts. Every step is labeled temporary. Every step is sold as protection. But temporary rules rarely disappear when the crisis never ends. So why are developed nations suddenly using tools normally reserved for economic emergencies? The answer points toward gold-silver term, central bank digital currencies. CBDCs represent the final form of financial control. Physical cash can be held privately. Digital currency lives on a ledger that records everything: who bought what, when, where, and from whom. Every purchase becomes data. Every transaction becomes traceable. But here's the problem for central banks. As long as cash works easily, people will use it. As long as ATMs give bills freely, people will withdraw. As long as gold and silver are simple to buy, people will diversify. The only way to make digital currency inevitable is to make everything else inconvenient. That's where this new banking rule fits. Withdrawal limits create friction. Asset flags create fear. Delays create frustration. And suddenly, digital money looks attractive. Instant transfers. No waiting, no limits. Just scan your face and go. That's the pitch coming next. And it will sound reasonable because they've spent months making everything else unreasonable. This isn't speculation. The Bank for International Settlements published a paper 18 months ago describing this exact strategy. They called it gold-silver term, making cash costly. The idea is simple: make physical money harder to use, and people voluntarily switch to digital systems. How? ATM limits, delays, flags, branch closures, reduced cash networks, death by 1,000 inconveniences. Behind the scenes, the infrastructure for gold-silver term, programmable money is already being built. Programmable money means currency with rules, money that can only be spent at certain stores, money that expires if unused, money that can't buy certain products. This already exists. China's digital yuan has these features. Sweden's e-krona is testing them. The European Central Bank's digital euro includes targeted spending controls. And now the United States banking system is creating conditions that make the system not just possible, but necessary. Because once cash becomes hard to access, once alternative assets get flagged, once banking becomes slow and frustrating, people will beg for the solution. They'll trade privacy for speed. They'll accept programmable money because anything feels better than waiting 7 days to access $5,000 of their own savings. There's another layer here. Small businesses depend on cash flow, not physical cash, movement speed. Restaurants pay suppliers daily, construction companies meet payroll weekly, retail stores restock constantly. These businesses operate on thin margins. A 7-day delay isn't inconvenient, it's fatal. Large corporations don't feel this. They use corporate credit lines and institutional payment systems that bypass consumer restrictions. This creates a two-tier economy. Wall Street moves freely, Main Street struggles. That consolidation isn't accidental, it's structural. The fence is going up, the exits are being monitored. And the question isn't whether change is happening, it's where you'll be standing when the gate closes. There's a photograph economists pass around quietly. It shows people standing in line outside a bank in Athens. The date is June 28th, 2015. They weren't withdrawing thousands. They were trying to withdraw $60. That's all the ATM allowed. The Greek government announced the restriction at midnight on a Sunday. By Monday morning, the entire nation was rationing money. What most people don't know is what happened 3 weeks before that photo. On June 5th, 2015, Greece's finance ministry said deposits were safe, no capital controls. Rumors were irresponsible. 3 weeks later, ATMs had limits. 4 weeks later, banks closed entirely. This is the pattern. Denial, restriction, freeze, and it never reverses. Cyprus, March 2013. 2 weeks of government assurances. Then a Saturday morning announcement. Depositors would lose 47% of their savings in a gold-silver term bail-in. Not through taxes, not through legislation, directly from accounts. People who tried withdrawing the week before found their transactions delayed and flagged. By the time the announcement came, it was too late. Lebanon, October 2019. The central bank governor said everything was stable, reserves were strong. 2 weeks later, unofficial capital controls appeared. Withdrawals dropped to $1,000 a week, then $500, then nothing. 4 years later, those restrictions still exist. Argentina, December 2001. The boring economic term. Corralito froze all bank accounts. Withdrawals capped at 250 pesos per week. The freeze was supposed to last 60 days. It lasted years. When accounts reopened, dollar deposits were forcibly converted into pesos at manipulated rates. Lifelong savings evaporated in a policy announcement. Same story, different countries, same sequence. First comes reassurance, then small limits, then larger limits, then freezes, then confiscation renamed as restructuring or stabilization. By the time people understand what's happening, the exits are sealed. So when the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia all roll out withdrawal restrictions in the same week, not in response to visible crisis, but ahead of one, informed observers don't ask if something is coming. They ask how much time remains. Because restrictions don't appear unless the system's already broken. They just haven't announced it yet. There's another pattern. Financial crises love weekends. Bear Stearns collapsed on a Sunday in March 2008. Lehman Brothers filed bankruptcy on a Sunday in September 2008. Greece imposed capital controls on a Sunday in June 2015. Cyprus announced its bail-in on a Saturday in March 2013. Weekends create a 48-hour window where people can't react, can't move funds, can't withdraw, can't protect themselves. By Monday morning, the system has already changed. This new banking rule going live on Friday evening gives institutions that exact window. If something breaks Sunday night, depositors are trapped. They can't move funds, they can't switch banks, they can't act. They become unsecured creditors in whatever comes next. The rule even includes gold, silver, emergency powers, allowing the Federal Reserve to suspend withdrawals entirely if deemed necessary for national security or systemic stability. No congressional vote, no public approval, one decision, and access stops. The banking system's behavior toward crypto tells the story. First, they ignored it, then they mocked it, then they regulated it, now they flag it. That progression reveals fear, not fear of technology, fear of exit. Every dollar that moves into crypto leaves their balance sheet. Every person who holds wealth outside banks no longer depends on them. The rule doesn't ban crypto. It just makes it suspicious. Delayed, frozen. That's gold-silver term, friction-based deterrence. Enough to stop most people, while preserving the illusion of freedom. But friction cuts both ways. It slows exits and proves exits matter. Beyond assets, there's community. When systems restrict, informal economies grow, barter networks form, direct exchange replaces digital payment. Local farmers, builders, service providers, these relationships become more valuable when official systems become rigid. This isn't regression, it's redundancy. Digital identity is the next layer. Facial scans for ATM withdrawals. Biometric banking apps, digital ID for account access, sold as security, marketed as convenience, but the real function is control. When money requires identity verification, identity becomes leverage. Wrong opinion, access removed. Wrong transaction, privileges suspended. Wrong association, financial rights revoked. This isn't theory. Canada proved it in 2022. Bank accounts frozen without trial, without conviction, based on political association. The infrastructure exists. The precedent exists. This new banking rule expands that capability domestically. So the real issue becomes philosophical. What is wealth? Is it numbers on a screen that vanish with a keystroke? Is it access to a system that requires permission? Or is it something held, controlled, owned, independent of institutional approval? People who survive system transitions answer that before crisis, not during. They diversify across systems, not just assets. They build redundancy. They avoid single points of failure. They understand that real wealth is what you can access when permission is denied. Right now, this Friday evening, there's still time. Time to move funds to less exposed institutions. Time to build cash reserves for continuity. Time to acquire physical assets outside the banking system. Time to build relationships that don't rely on digital intermediaries. Time to create options before options disappear. But that time is measured in days, not months, because the pattern is clear. Restriction leads to freeze. Freeze leads to confiscation. Confiscation gets renamed as contribution. And by the time it's announced on the evening news, the exits are already sealed. Prepared people move early. Others debate. Prepared people position, others wait. Prepared people act, others ask permission. Because in every collapse, every currency failure, every banking crisis, the same truth appears. Wealth inside the system is permission. Wealth outside the system is ownership. And the difference between the two is freedom when action matters most. The rule is live. Restrictions are active. The weekend has begun. Monday morning will show who prepared and who waited too long. Right now, the choice is still individual, but the window is closing through executive decisions by unelected banking officials. One switch and the ATM network goes dark. One announcement and accounts freeze. The infrastructure for total lockdown is now legally in place. Today, it's a $500 limit. Tomorrow, it could be zero. And there's a mathematical reason this is happening now. The gold-silver term derivative market. Global derivative exposure sits near $1 quadrillion. That's not a typo. Quadrillion with a Q. These are bets stacked on bets. Leverage built on leverage. Artificial value that holds until one piece breaks. When one major position fails, it triggers margin calls. Margin calls trigger forced selling. Forced selling triggers price collapse. Price collapse triggers defaults. The entire structure is interconnected. If one major bank collapses over a weekend, contagion spreads before markets even open. Withdrawal restrictions aren't about protecting depositors. They're about making sure depositors can't escape before the implosion. Meanwhile, central banks are buying gold at record levels. China added over 200 tons in the last 18 months. Russia continues accumulating. Even the Federal Reserve's balance sheet reflects increased gold holdings. The same institutions pushing digital money are hoarding the oldest form of money in history. That's not a contradiction. That's a confession. They know what survives when debt systems collapse. They know what holds value when confidence disappears. They know gold doesn't need banks, doesn't need permission, doesn't need regulatory approval, so they accumulate it while telling the public to trust digital systems, while restricting physical alternatives, while building fences around exits. The pattern is complete. Denial phase ending. Restriction phase active. And anyone who studies history knows what comes next. The only unknown is timing. The only advantage is preparation. Because once the freeze is announced, history says it's already too late.
Θα σας το πω τώρα στα γρήγορα. Έχουμε έναν δεύτερο τύπο capital control από αύριο. Μου το στείλαν από Αμερική, δυστυχώς το είδα τώρα μόλις έκλεισα. Το έκανα όμως ξεχωριστό βίντεο, θα το έχετε να το μοιράζετε σε χώρια που να ξέρετε και τι ακριβώς λέτε. Από αύριο οποιαδήποτε μετακίνηση πάνω από τα $500 θα πρέπει να περνάει έγκριση 7 ημερών, θα πρέπει να προσέχετε τι χρήματα βάζετε, τι χρήματα βγάζετε, κινδυνεύει να κλειδώσει ο λογαριασμός σας για 30 ημέρες και να ελεγχθείτε για ξέπλυμα μαύρου χρήματος. Ποια είναι η λύση? Με το που θα έρθουν τα κέντρα ανταλλαγών, θα ανοίξουν από την Τρίτη, Τετάρτη, πότε θα ανοίξουν, πηγαίνουμε εκεί και μαζευόμαστε στους δικούς μας λογαριασμούς, φεύγουμε από τις τράπεζες. Το είπαμε σήμερα, τώρα μας πιέζουν να το κάνουμε γρήγορα και άμεσα. Μόλις θα έρθουν τα Redemption Center και θα απελευθερωθούμε από τις τράπεζες, πρέπει τα χρήματά μας να φύγουν από εκεί μέσα. Τα πράγματα είναι πλέον πολύ απλά. Το πώς θα φύγουν τα λεφτά από εκεί μέσα για να μην γίνει απότομη ανάληψη χρημάτων, θα το δω πώς θα λειτουργήσει από αύριο. Θα μιλήσω με κάποιους φίλους που έχω τραπεζικούς, θα δω πώς μπορούμε να το ρυθμίσουμε. Θα ξανακάνω βίντεο μάλλον την Τρίτη ακριβώς για αυτό το θέμα. Να δούμε τι θα κάνουμε. Και εσείς και εμείς, όλοι μαζί στο ίδιο καζάνι είμαστε, έτσι. Λοιπόν, σας χαιρετώ με το καλό. Καλό βράδυ.